So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this session organized by the Priority Area 2 of the Danube Strategy, which is entitled Affordable, Secure and Sustainable Energy for the Danube Region. This session will discuss the most actual and demanding energy challenges, what we face in the Danube region, and we will introduce some key topics and their results with our priority area is dealing with. You can see on the agenda that I will give a very first introductory presentation just to set the framework. And this will be followed by two keynotes, two topic-related keynotes. One will be given by Márton Sipos, KPMG from Hungary, who will talk about how to phase out Russian gas in the EUSDR, which is a very important and hot topic. And as we know that we can save or reduce our energy consumption not only by reducing the consumption itself, but with energy efficiency measures using this very, let's say, old known phrase that the cheapest energy is the one what you don't use. So that's why the other topic the PA2 is dealing with is energy efficiency, and there will be an overview lecture on that given by Léon Kamenický from the Czech Republic. Then there was another very important event in September in Sarajevo, where I guess several of you attended, the Sarajevo Energy and Climate Week, which was dedicated to discussion of many of energy-related topics. So then we will welcome Sanja Kapetina from Bosnia-Herzegovina, and she will give an overview what were the most important outcomes of the Sarajevo Energy and Climate Week. And after these three lectures or three presentations, we will have a panel discussion with the speakers, and we have another distinguished guest in the panel, Irina Apostol, who is from Moldova, and who is the Danube Youth Council member and a very active member of our priority area group. So then, how do I... Oops. Yes, okay, I pressed the right button. So when we look at the key energy challenges, what we face in the Danube region, we see, of course, very general ones, but we also see topic-related ones. Of course, one of the most important group of challenges is coming from the geopolitical situation of this region, which also encompasses a heavy dependence on fossil fuels and energy imports from Russia, which is really a very big pressure on these countries. The other big challenge is coming from the infrastructure, the energy infrastructure in general, the lack of interconnections and storage capacities, but we also see that the legacy infrastructure, so the old-fashioned pipelines, the district heating systems are also a very, very big problem. Of course, a general challenge all countries share to different extent is the low share of renewable energies, the high energy intensity. I was talking about energy efficiency, and many countries still have a very complex and long lasting regulatory and licensing procedures, which is, of course, again, impeding the energy transition processes. Sorry, what do I have to press? It's not. Huh? It's not working. Is there somebody from? Oh, yes, I just have to press it strong. Thank you. Whenever we are looking any of these energy-related challenges, whatever topic we are talking about, we always have to think in a very complex framework, which we often call the energy trilemma. So we can approach all these questions from the perspective of energy security, from the perspective of sustainable transition. And of course, there are important impacts and viewpoints coming from the affordability and the competitiveness. Moreover, all these processes can be also approached whether this is a long-term process or a long-term, well-planned or well-predictable process, which is coming from the energy transition, where are very well-defined and long-term strategies and goals. But of course, these are impacted by the very unpredictable and unforeseen short-term challenges coming from the different types of energy crisis. We can, of course, what we quote most often is the Russian-Ukrainian war, but we cannot forget the impacts of the COVID or the current US foreign policy, which is also making some quite big impacts and fluctuations on the energy markets and the energy systems. So the key topics, what we will address in this panel, as I said, is the diversification of the gas supply. This is a so-called flagship topic of our priority area. So since the Russian-Ukrainian war, we conducted several studies, several comprehensive macro-regional analysis on the gas markets of the region, showcased how the countries have different options to increase their energy sovereignty, how can they diversify their energy supplies, what were the lessons learned from the past 2 winters. So Márton's presentation will touch this issue. The second topic, as I said, which we selected for this panel is the energy efficiency in the Danube region, which will be given by Léon. And this will discuss what were the results of this macro-regional analysis on energy efficiency in the EUSDR countries. And the third topic, which will be not directly part of this panel, but what with the EUSDR, so our priority area is also dealing with, is the hydrogen economy in the Danube region. That was discussed in the Sarajevo Energy Week. Because we think we also have to look forward and look for new alternative fuels and possibilities for our energy systems. And the hydrogen as an energy vector is definitely that one. We saw that there are very big differences regarding the maturity of energy markets in the Danube region. So countries like Austria or Germany have very well-developed industries heavily building on the hydrogen, while some other countries still lacking behind but have excellent opportunities. So for example, Romania, Ukraine, for the green hydrogen production have excellent potentials. So finally, I would like to give you some, let's say, general thoughts to open this panel discussion. So we can conclude that definitely that in addition to these global energy-related challenges, the Danube region faces specific ones, mostly coming from the geopolitical situation, the legacy infrastructure, the high energy intensity. And if we look at any of energy-related questions, and I hope the keynotes will also highlight this, that we are always moving or let's say playing on a very complex in a very complex framework of the energy trilemma, the long and short-term processes. But what also warn us that we really have to reconsider the current priorities and structures and effectiveness of the current measures to face all these challenges. And our experience shows the importance of macro-regional studies and macro-regional analysis. So examples will be given in the keynote, because in this macro-regional analysis we can really have a very clear picture on the differences and the different approaches of the different countries, but also we can see that what are the common priorities and what are the common goals where we can move forward together. and that's and where we can have together EUSDR countries can have a higher contribution or impact on the EU energy and climate strategy. So with this, I would like to thank you for your attention. And then we are moving to the panels. And as I said, our first keynote speaker will be Márton Sipos from KPMG Hungary. And he will give an overview on the gas phase out and energy diversification in the EUSDR countries. So, Márton, the floor is yours.
So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure for me to be here with you today. Hopefully, we will solve the technical issues soonly as well. So, as Annamária has already set the scene for my presentation, it's always about the energy trilemma. So, how to have a sustainable, affordable option with security of supply at the end. What I'm going to talk about is much more about security of supply and about affordability. It will be about transition, but not related to sustainability, but I would say to survive in this time. So we did a study for the PA2. Hopefully we will go to the next slide, please. Just to give you a picture about what we did, as good analysts, we first of all collected all the information that we needed to do our study. So we collected all the data that's related to supply, that's related to demand, storage filling values, also prices, and many others. What's an important thing, and that would be much more important, is what market trends have been experienced during the 23-24 and 24-25 winter periods in relation to gas. And the whole trigger was the Russian-Ukrainian war that made Europe, let's say, to handle the Russian imports and to try to phase to and shift to other supply routes and supply sources, which Europe was planning since a long time, but I think this was the time and this was the pressure that made Europe change a lot, and also the EUSDR countries as well. As a next step, we did a thorough regulatory overview because it is and it was very much having the current situation had a strong impact on the prices, both on the household level, industry level, SME level, and to the whole market. So there should be, and there were some regulatory measures that in such cases need to be installed. So we also analyzed them. They were done on the EU level, and also they were done on the national level as well. We also analyzed the infrastructure developments, mainly the LNG developments, also infrastructural developments and local production developments. And can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you very much. So one important thing that we need to note at this start, that how the market reacted at first time to this whole situation. So what happened is the consumption drop. So you can see here the, let's say, for each, and I would say mainly European EUSDR countries, which we are collecting data for these slides. The reason of this is because for the other countries, there were not much consistent data, or there were consistent data, but not for the whole period we were analyzing. So we highlighted here only the EU countries of the EUSDR. So you can see for each country how the consumption has dropped from 21 until 24. You can see that there is a drop to 22, still a drop to 23, and there is a rebound in 24. But what is for sure is that in these cases, the consumption has dropped by almost 20%. And what was another thing is that most of the sources have, and the import routes have shifted towards LNG. So there was a time when the, let's say, phasing out Russian gas needed to be handled. And this could be also seen in the consumption, how the market reacted to all the price decreases. The EUSDR countries, most of them stood out because they can handle, and they were resilient with handling how the consumption is dropping, how to find new routes, how to introduce new regulatory measures. But I will tell a bit more detail about all that, but that's an important thing to say about EU countries and also about EUSDR countries. What we can see from the data that this consumption will probably not go back to the level where it has been in 2021. The reason of this is that a lot of consumers have shifted to some other fuel type, a lot of have decreased their production, and also energy efficiency measures have been introduced during this time. So that can be said that based on this information, we do not really expect that the consumption will just jump up to the levels as it was before 2022. And although, what I said, all the countries could handle that, even on the EU level, there were mild winters. It's not sure that this would stay forever. It's not sure that, let's say, what we saw in the last time could be handled in the future, but what we can see is that there was already a strong progress in all this. Could we go to the next slide? Yes, thank you very much. On the right side, there is just a list of the regulatory measures we analyzed. Thank you. And I think one important point is how the governments and how the regulatory interventions just try to handle the high and volatile energy prices. But we can see that these regulations were, let's say, different in kind. So in some countries, the price caps were introduced mainly for households and also for the industry. So the peak energy prices couldn't, and the gas prices couldn't go above a certain level. Of course, in order to handle that, there was a governmental financing behind it. Also related to financing, there was a financial support in other countries for utilities and also for the households. Also an important point is that there was initiative to provide social protection measures, mainly for the SMEs, in some cases for public buildings and also for households. So what we can see from these is that these all need governmental financing, but there were many interventions during this time to try to mitigate the results and the impacts of the high gas prices in the region. And what's an overarching point, as you can see below, is that there was also long-term strategies introduced not only on the EU level, but only on local levels. A lot of countries have introduced the Repower EU into their strategies and also built up regulations to decrease the consumption, to fill up the storages, and many more in order to handle the current situation. And now it's working. So, and when we are talking about the infrastructure part, and what you will see here is mainly about the EU as the whole, but that has a strong impact on the EUSDR countries. So during this time, during 22 and 25 in our case, it shows that what the countries can do when they are trying to phase out Russian gas is that they try to find some other import sources. They can increase their current production, and also they can find some other routes to have the missing imports brought back to their systems. So what we could see is that there was an increase in the imports from Norway. There was an increase from Turkey, from Azerbaijan. Also, there were a lot of new production options introduced. And last but not least, the most important is that the whole European market was shifting much more towards LNG. So LNG capacities have been increased by around 50 BCM per year, and there is still others to increase the European import capacities planned to be introduced until 2030. So the market is reacting, and the market has reacted quite quick to this current situation. Also, the expansion has happened in many production sites, also in the case of interconnectors. The vertical corridor came back to picture. The top corridor has increased its flows. Also, the Baltic pipe came into a further step. So there have been a lot of measures, and that's an important thing, that the European countries, and including the EUSDR countries, have done a lot of measures that made them much more resilient, much more stronger, and much more capable to handle the situation without Russian pipeline gas. I'm not saying that all the countries were that much successful in phasing out Russian gas. There are, of course, some cases where the pipelines and the physical flows do not allow that easily to shift towards the Russian gas, but most of the countries try to handle this with finding new sources, with increasing the LNG imports, and also with increasing their local production. That has reshaped how the EUSDR countries are operating right now compared to what was in 2022. And let's just go back a bit more. If we go back to what was in 2020, like Europe is looking totally different. In that case, we had, let's say, the three normal or four import routes, so from Algeria, from Norway, from Russia, and also the LNG coming from the US and other directions. But now it's heavily depending on LNG. There is much less Russian gas imported, and there is an increase in the Norway gas and increase in the Azerbaijani gas, and also in the local production. Or the plans are pushing forward and speeding up the processes, for example, for the Romania Neptune field, and also for the Leviathan field in Israel. To conclude all that, what I said, that it can be seen that the EUSDR countries have adapted to the current situation. They became much more resilient, much more stronger. Just at the end, it's Hungary mentioned, but it's not only Hungary which could handle the current situation. So the consumption was decreasing. They had a high import dependency, and they could still handle the situation with regulatory measures and with trying to restructure how their market is looking right now compared to how it was looking back in 2022. If you are looking at the structural transformation, it's much more about the shift towards the LNG terminals and the increase of the production. I have mentioned that a bit detailed previously. And an important thing is that policy measures should be there, and policy and regulatory response should be there. That has a cost, and this is not just, I would say, like a so-called cost, but it really had a cost on the governmental side. So in order to handle this, in order to mitigate the impacts of the high electricity prices, the regulatory measures needed to be introduced in order to change and reshape how the EUSDR countries are working. And we could see, as I said, the trigger was the 2022 Russian-Ukrainian invasion. And during the last two winters, in 23, 24, 24, 25, there have been serious progress in the EUSDR countries, but just we cannot be, I would say, be much more comfortable with that, because on one side, the market has become much more resilient, but on the other side, the weather was also favorable for us. In case the weather would change, that could also cause some issues in winter times. But what we could see, an important thing is that the storages are and were filled, and also regulation and EU level and local level regulation just supported all that. I didn't want to go much more into detail on the country level, how the Russian phase out has happened or what measures were done on the country level, but our study is available on the PA2 website, so you can get there much more details on that. And thank you for your attention. I will be here later on if you have any questions to me about this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Márton, for this comprehensive overview on the gas market. And as he said, I encourage you that this report, which is really an extensive, nearly 100-page report with all the detailed analysis on country level data and policies and everything, is available on the PA2 website. So who is interested, please check that. And now we will move to the second presentation, which is on energy efficiency, another important approach how to make our energy, how to diversify or how to make our energy use more effective. And the speaker will be Léon Kamenický from GATUM, from the Czech Republic, who made extensive studies on this topic. And Léon, please come.
Hello, thank you. Good morning. I hope you are having a great time in Sarajevo. And I will start with my presentation. So as introduced, last year, actually, we were in cooperation with the Ministry of Trade and Commerce in the Czech Republic, doing an extensive study on the energy efficiency in the industrial sector. And I hope it works perfect. So I will try to be as quick as possible because I know you are all looking forward for the panel discussion. But of course, to introduce the topic, I wanted to show you some basic data because I think they carry some interesting information. So why industrial energy efficiency is even important for the Danube region? So I think it is quite well summarized in the Sankey diagram below, where you can see that the industry actually in all the countries together of the Danube region accounts for more than 22% of final energy consumption, which is quite a lot. And compared to an EU average of 16%, it's actually a region that can make an impact when we speak about this topic. Of course, I will then go into more detail because we can't put every country of the Danube region in the same basket, and there are some differences. But why the topic is very important, because we all know that we have now these very big topics like renewable energy sources, etc., etc. But it is not always about like producing more energy, but sometimes about using the energy more efficient that we already have, and also because the transition period, as we all know, will take longer, and the change cannot be done from one day to another if we speak about changing from coal to more sustainable energy sources and similarly. What is also very interesting for the Danube region is also our energy experts in the company told me that it's very interesting also to show the transformation losses that are actually also seen in the Danube region while producing energy, because many sources or from where you get the energy still are ways where you actually lose during the production a lot of energy. Another very interesting maybe graph before I will move into some policy implications and what we found in the study is also comparing seeing how much energy is consumed by the industry by every country in the Danube region. Here you can see that Austria and Czechia are actually very large countries with a very large industrial base, which can be also seen by the value added that this sector produces. What you can also see that with the increasing use of energy by the industries, you also see an increase in the value added. But what's very interesting is actually Austria, which has an industry that outputs or has a very large value added, but on the other hand consumes almost the same energy as the Czech industry. Why can this be? Of course, there are many sources behind it. It might be the industrial also structure, because, for example, in Czechia, we know that the industries are relying more on manufacturing, on some heavy industries that actually need more energy to produce goods and mainly goods actually, and different products. But also it is, as I will show later, and what also our study showed, Austria actually demonstrates an example of good practices where industry already is far already did implemented many measures and new technologies to actually use energy more efficiently within their industry. And then it's very interesting that such data and such long-term or long-year efforts you can actually see also on high-level macroeconomic data. What we found out that are the main drivers of industrial energy efficiency. So mainly what we also perceived when we spoke and collected the data from different energy experts across the Danube region states are actually some national and EU legislation. So we saw a big difference, for example, when we spoke to experts from Baden-Württemberg, that their companies actually are very well aware about their impact on the environment and are open to implement like measures before the government comes with some restrictive laws. It is a little bit of different stories in other countries. If we would take, for example, Slovakia, Czech Republic, where a main constraint is not only the motivation, of course, it's also often misinformation about the topic, but also like some financial constraints that the companies in these countries face, and thus they are not that open sometimes to directly or to invest huge amounts of money into new technologies and processes. Then there are different government-led initiatives that I will speak in a moment, and of course new technologies which are an important enabler for industrial energy efficiency. First of all, I think most of you are well aware what new legislation we have in the European Union, but what's a little bit interesting also from our experience is the new directive on the sustainability reporting standards, ESG in Europe, I would call it. But we all know already that the implementation starts to be postponed, the rules change, the thresholds change. But what we also found out that many companies actually that already started with implementing different measures in order to like comply with this new directive are actually seeing benefits because as they started with the so with the energy, implementing implementing some energy management in their companies, mainly often in industry we see really huge also state-owned companies that actually were inefficient until a few years. And thanks to these new systems and technologies, and also they see that it actually has a positive impact also on their finances by the end of the year. And we see that even that some or many companies, large companies that should have started with the reporting and maybe and also smaller ones actually want to do it voluntarily because they know firstly that one day they will have to do it, and second that there are actually some benefits. The role of the government, so what we found in the study, and I think it's also kind of obvious, but it's fine to remember it, it's always better when the cooperation between the governments and the industry is more on a voluntary basis. So on one hand, yeah, you can make new rules and new regulation about energy audits, enforce them and everything, but the paper can actually, you can write many things on the paper, and it's always better to have industry on board to cooperate with the major stakeholders in the country and actually also give them the space to hear what are the main constraints for them to implement actually some measures that would actually help to energy efficiency. One thing that we find particularly interesting and that is underused in the Danube region up to this date are voluntary agreements with the industry. So some countries use them more like on paper, pro forma with some largest industries. But then we see also, again, very good practices in Baden-Württemberg, where we saw that there is a whole like initiative where actually companies cooperate with the government, local government, where they share like best practices, and also companies that are that already implemented some interesting technologies in their processes are open to share with other companies that want to be on board. And what we particularly liked as experts on the regarding this good practice is the let's say voluntary basis of such initiatives that are missing in other countries. What we also found interesting is that Austria also thinks a lot about how to make energy audits logical, not just like copy paste what should be there, but are thinking about whether it's enforceable, whether industries could meet the requirements, and similarly, what we think also it's an important way how to approach actually all these new rules that are also coming often from the European Union. Yeah, and what we also see as a good approach are the introduction of regional competence centers. Here again, industry can meet local politics. As I can give you directly an example from the Czech Republic, actually, we have this coal region, or there is no coal anymore, but a structurally underdeveloped region that actually made a new energy competence center in the region. And we see already first successes because they gather, they translate the information from the central government about energy efficiency, about energy management, about all these measures, and bring them to the region and cooperate with different industries and also local public authorities, and help cities also in their energy transformations. So the potential of new technologies, I think it's again a point that we all know, that new technologies can actually help economize or save some energy also in industrial processes, of course. What we found out that is still a topic that is not that much popular also across the countries of the Danube region is the waste heat recovery, because many industries create a lot of waste heat that is not reused, but there are actually already technologies that can use this heat again and transform it into energy that can then go back into the industry and into production. What is here also what is important to point out is that of course we also focus a little bit on small and medium-sized enterprises, which is a different story, mainly in countries where there is not that many capital. Because there the small and medium-sized enterprises are less willing to invest mainly in the early stages of their business into new technologies. It's very expensive for them, and there again we see a big potential of a cooperation between the government and local businesses by, for example, providing different incentives. Often it's not only about giving different funds, because mainly EU states now have budgets to distribute to small and medium-sized enterprises on energy efficiency projects, but it's also about providing some expertise and guidance, because also from the terrain we see often that small and medium-sized companies would actually like to use a fund and implement some new technology, but they don't know how to use it, they don't know who could give them the competence and how to realize such projects. So this is something we also try to convince the Czech government very often, to provide this guidance to different beneficiaries also of EU funds that can be then drivers of different changes, including energy efficiency. So I promise not to do it too technical. So now a few strategic next steps. So what we also see from an external point, there is a huge potential in the Danube region network. I think on a few slides before, there are many synergies. We also between the countries, many countries have had very similar historical development, which influences also industry and how industry is organized and which energy sources industries use. And therefore, we see a potential of sharing good practices. In our study or comparative study, we couldn't say that there were some regions that were 100% examples of only good practices. I think in the Danube region, every country has its own strength that can be shared actually, also when it comes to the topic of industrial energy efficiency. What was for us particularly interesting was, for example, the Moldovan case, where we saw that the government created, I don't know if it still exists, I hope that yet, their own huge body of energy audits that were specialized on industry and that were consulting for free to different companies across the country how to implement different measures, which we saw actually as a very good example. Then what we found, what would be also interesting is some sector specific collaboration. We of course don't know how much private companies cooperate across the country, but of course the governments can again a little bit monitor whether it happens. For example, we saw that in the region there is an abundance of petrochemical companies which are a great or are a huge consumer of energy or an energy goods actually in the region. So we see there a potential that if like similar companies or similar industries communicate, they can again share good practices and have also some projects together, sometimes also with the help of public funding. What is also important is a never-ending dialogue with companies, with small companies in regions. This I already mentioned. In some countries, companies are way more on board, who are also very happy to share how they help to the society, how they save energy in their processes and everything. In some other countries, the story is more difficult, and thus the dialogue directly in regions is very important, as with all topics, I would say. Also, what we see as a huge difference across the different regions of the Danube region, I will soon end, is the trust between the industry and the government. So somewhere it's also based actually on the regional innovation system theory. Somewhere we see that the government or the local governments cooperate with the industry for many years on many topics, and the trust is very high. But then we see, and it is especially true for the Danube region, that the trust between the government and the business sector is often very low, and the two worlds live their separate lives. From the technical perspective, of course, and this will be my last point because I want to give space to the last speaker, certainly what we saw as a huge potential is also advancing smart grids. This is a more technical one because actually if you want companies and private also building owners and everything to have their photovoltaic systems and everything, we also have to have intelligent electric networks, which is a topic that is they are generally underdeveloped in the Danube region compared to the rest of Europe, and I think there are only few. I think there are almost no exception. So this is certainly an important enabler for the future. We already know that there are some even cross-national projects. I think Slovakia with Hungary are actually cooperating on modernizing their energy networks. And similarly, but without such enabler, it would be also very hard to implement more energy from renewable sources. So thank you for your attention. And if you will have any questions, you can then ask afterwards. And I also have printed some copies of short versions of the study. So if you want to have a souvenir, you can take them.
Thank you very much, Léon. And similarly to the gas study, these studies made on energy efficiency, so the full versions are also available on the website of the priority area too, so you can check that. And now I would like to invite to the stage Sanja Kapetina from Bosnia-Herzegovina, from the Ministry of Trade, and she will give us a summary on the most important outcomes of the Sarajevo Energy and Climate Week, which was organized in this September, which discussed really a huge and very wide range of energy-related topics. So, Sanja, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to greet you all on behalf of the Ministry of Foreign Trade and Economic Relations of Bosnia-Herzegovina and my own behalf, to express my gratitude to organizers for organizing such important event, and of course to emphasize the importance of EU strategy for Danube region. Now we are speaking about priority area to sustainable energy. This strategic framework is of particular importance for Bosnia-Herzegovina, as it enables us to further improve our regional cooperation in this very demanding and challenging process of the energy transition that we are all facing with. And It's really my honor and pleasure to be here today with you. As we could hear in previous speeches and presentation, today, the Danube region actually faces several similar challenges, from outdated energy infrastructure to high dependence on fossil fuels. In Bosnia and Herzegovina, that is coal also, but imported fossil fuels such as oil and gas from one side, and from the other side is increasing need for further diversification of our energy sources by enabling security of supply while we are facing this process of energy transition. And yeah, we are really committed to be in line with the EU. We actually signed various international treaties and agreements such as Energy Community Treaty, Paris Agreement, Sofia Declaration on greener agenda for the Western Balkan, and by it committed ourselves that we'll be in line with the EU ambitious targets and goals with the main target to reach carbon neutrality up to 2050. But I would say that this process, we should not only view as our obligation, this also can be a huge development opportunity for all our countries, especially for Bosnia and Herzegovina, having in mind that energy sector is actually one of the most important economic branches. Yes, we could see that energy transition is very complex and very demanding task, but it requires significant investments in the energy sector. But we also need to consider the benefits that can be huge for our citizens, for society as whole, creation of new green jobs, in environmental protection, in increasing our GDP, and of course, ensuring security of supply. So the key question in this process is actually how to achieve this. What is the best solution? In our understanding, the first necessary step is develop necessary strategic documents, and I'm happy to say that we are working on this. We prepared our NECP, meaning Integrated Energy and Climate Plan. Within these documents, we clearly define our very ambitious energy climate targets up to 2030, together with necessary policies and measures needed to reach those targets. Also, we start up with the process of updating our framework energy strategy with the target to develop a long-term strategy that was also mentioned that is needed to achieve climate neutrality up to 2050. Second necessary step is definitely to prepare all necessary legal and regulatory framework that will be fully in line with the EU. And I must say that Bosnia and Herzegovina, as most of the countries within the region, are facing huge challenges here. We are all aware of the dynamic of the changes within the EU. We saw in the previous presentation one part of it, let's say this way. So we, as a contracting party of Energy Community Treaty, are now facing with transposition of clean energy package, and now we are speaking our Fit for 55 or REPower. So we do not have much time, and very demand new cross-sectoral regulation needs to be transposed within our regulation. And third, but definitely not the less important, is access to financial mechanism, meaning funds, that will enable us to finance this process of energy transition. Why I'm saying this? Because in accordance with our NECP, 9 billion euros are needed for Bosnia and Herzegovina in this period up to 2030 to implement all needed policies and measures. So I would say that now we are really in the crucial moment of energy transition. And this process of decarbonization is no longer a matter of choice, but is a necessity. We have less and less time. We have less and less human resources. This is also something that needs to be stressed out. So every step really needs to be strategically planned, institutionally supported, and regulatory granted. In this process, regional cooperation is the must. Really, we want to be in line with the EU, but we are not as developed. We do not have access to the same funds. So regional cooperation, share of experience, Best practices is something that is very much needed for our countries. And I believe that events like this are very much important because they can help us in this demanding process. And I'm really happy that I can, be part of it. Today, my task is actually to pass you information and main conclusions from the another regional event that were organized in Sarajevo, Sarajevo Energy and Climate Week. That is actually a regional platform for dialogue that shares among the same, let's say, target is how actually to accelerate these reforms and enable sustainable development. So I will now go through 11 main conclusions from our Sarajevo Energy and Climate Week. First is climate represent an existential threat. Yeah, as I said, it's really time for concrete actions. We, as most of the neighboring countries, are committed to meeting these ambition goals. In order to be able to do so, regional cooperation is very much needed and crucial. Energy transition is the key to the climate neutrality and sustainable development. But energy transition is not only about decarbonization, it is also about transforming our economies, societies, and policies. Green transition creates new jobs, not just through investments in renewables, in energy efficiency measures, but also new technologies, and all this will enable us to faster growth and better employment opportunities. Political stability is precondition. That was one of the conclusions, because without strong political will, it will be very hard to reach all these ambitious targets in this quite short period of time. A gradual coal phase out in line with EU decarbonization goals. That is very important, especially for Bosnia and Herzegovina, having in mind that 2/3 of our electricity is produced from coal. That's the reason why coal is actually in our country transition fuel, not gas, like in the most other countries. And we really need to find the best way in this process in order to enable just transition. CBAM is one of the key conclusions from Sarajevo Energy and Climate Week, new challenge for us, for all Western Balkan countries. So what was concluded, it is necessary to prepare national ETS in order to be fully in line with EU ETS, because that is the necessary to reduce financial risk and encourage further green investment. Renewable energy potential is something that I'm happy to say Bosnia and Herzegovina has. We have huge potential in hydro, in wind, in solar, in biomass. But what is needed in order to be able to deploy this potential is really huge investments in our grids, both distribution and transmission grid. Hybrid systems are something that is needed. Smart grids are, as we could hear, key to energy independence. Regional cooperation and knowledge exchange are fundamental in this process. So once again, we are stressing the importance of regional cooperation in this process. Urgent reforms further aligned with EU acquis, something that is also needed. Bosnia and Herzegovina is now at energy crossroads, so it's really time for decisive reforms. The next few years will be crucial, and we really need to have clear strategic framework. We need to have regulatory framework, access to finance in order to be able to go through this process of energy transition. Green transition brings economic growth and access to European market. So this is, of course, something that Bosnia and Herzegovina is working on. And key conclusion actually highlight the necessity for the new investments, not just in renewable energy, but also in energy efficiency, both in primary and energy side, in grid infrastructure, regulatory reforms, development of e-mobility. That is also something that we are currently working a lot of. And actually tomorrow we have one conference that is related to e-mobility. And of course, special attention was put on production and use of green hydrogen, as was mentioned, as one of the strategic solutions for industrial decarbonization. So to conclude, energy sovereignty is not just national privilege, it is a regional achievement, and only through regional cooperation, exchange of knowledge, through joint projects, this region can go successfully through this process of energy transition. And ministries stays fully committed to this process and is ready for further collaboration with all colleagues, with all countries in the region in this aspect. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sanja, for this very nice overview and also highlighting Bosnia-Herzegovina, so the host country's perspectives on the energy transition. And now we arrive to the, let's say, second part of our session, which will be a short, about half an hour panel discussion. So I invite the speakers to come here to the stage, and also Irina. And so we can have a little bit more personal or more interactive discussion. And I also encourage the audience to get involved. So if you have any questions, either related to the presentations or the topics, then feel free to raise your hand and just be part of our session. So if there are no questions from the audience at the moment, I would like to start this panel discussion with a let's say little bit general and warming up questions that we heard, or some thoughts about what are the most pressing energy challenges in the Danube region, and what lessons the countries learned from the recent energy crisis. But now I would like to ask one, I think that's the most important question, once more this question from the panelists, that from your perspective, either from your country perspective or expertise, what do you think which are the most important challenges you are dealing with in your country? And it is totally free, so whoever wants to start. Sanja, please.
Yeah. Maybe I can start because I anyhow mentioned some of them in my keynote speech. Yeah, I must say that in this process we are facing with many challenges, and that these challenges are actually deeply interconnected. Mm-hmm. I already mentioned outdated, sorry, can you hear me well? Yeah, just to be sure. I already mentioned our outdated and fragmented energy infrastructure. Really, in order to be able to deploy this huge amount of RES, we really need immediately to modernize our distribution network, but also transmission network. So that is the first challenge that we are, I think, all facing with. Second one is high dependence on fossil fuels. For Bosnia and Herzegovina, coal as domestic source, but also imported fuels such as oil and gas. So if we are speaking about coal, it is necessary really to go through this process and take into consideration just transition, because that's a social issue also. And if we are speaking about imported fuels like oil and gas, we are all aware how this is challenging and how this geopolitical and market shock can really have influence on us. Then I would say regulatory institutional challenges. It is necessary to develop adequate laws and bylaws that will enable us to go to this process. Financial mechanisms, access to funds, so that we be able to finance all these necessary activities in this process of energy transition. For Bosnia and Herzegovina, but I'm sure for all Western Balkan, at least, countries, we are also facing with the challenge related to the lack of human capacities. So we have this lack of human capacities even when for funds that we have now access to. We do not have enough capacities to prepare bankable projects. Also, we do not have enough capacity within our main institutions, meaning the ministry that needs to lead this process of energy transition. So, yeah, there are a lot of challenges, I would say, but I think there are solutions. First, One would be definitely this integrated approach, because everything is really very connected. So we really need to have these integrated strategies or integrated energy and climate plan that will take into consideration all dimensions of the energy union, all sectors, in order to find the best solution. Clear regulatory framework is needed, systematic approach in this process, I would say, and last but definitely not least, regional cooperation. Without regional cooperation, share of the experience, joint projects, it will be hard to go through this process. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe we should ask Irina, as she hasn't had any opportunity till now, say a little bit about the situation in Moldova, which I think is very interesting for all of us.
So from the side of Moldova, in recent years, actually we solved a lot of problems that we had before. So for instance, if until 2022 we were very dependent on Russian gases, now we can proudly say that we do not have any contract with Gazprom. And this was a lot of work from our government, from diversifying the energy sources. Of course, we are still dependent on gas, but we are not blackmailed as we were before. And for instance, since the previous year, the end of previous year, when Russian gas were not allowed anymore to pass Ukraine, in the previous situation, it would be a disaster for Moldova. Because, for instance, the separatist region that we have in our country, the Transnistria, they faced the situation of about 2 months of winter without hot water, without heating in their apartments. And if the case of Moldova, about 60% of houses are heated still till this day with woods, because for us it is way cheaper than buying gas. Then in Transnistria, the situation was totally different, because gas for them was almost free, electricity for them was almost free. They got to the situation where most of the houses are gasified, and you just end without any gas in the middle of the winter. So for them, it was a huge disaster. This winter, we hope for a better situation. And even if our government was offering them support, for instance, buying gas on European market and then providing them, but it would mean paying the new prices, which on European market is way more expensive than getting it for free from Russia. And so from the energy security point, we are now way far advanced as we were 3 years ago, and I'm very proud to say that. And on the other hand, we are improving very fast on implementing renewable energy sources. So our renewable energy sources for prosumer sector increased the capacity of about 8 times in the last 3 years. These results cannot be ignored, of course. And yes, I should be mentioned that the Republic of Moldova is a very small country, and implementing some measures in those sizes, and when you have 2.5 million people, is way easier than implementing the same changes in Germany or Austria or any other bigger country. But nevertheless, with the improving the legislation, and we recently in December 2024 finalized the legislation regarding energy communities. We're also now piloting the first energy communities in Moldova, and I'm also involved in one project regarding piloting the very first energy communities in the residential sector. So this will also break or open a lot more opportunities on this instant. So as my colleague mentioned, I would say that at this moment, the biggest challenges for us are human resources, because the political will is very strong and we get a lot of support recent years from the European Union, but we still have a huge lack of specialists. The only faculty in Moldova that is training young specialists in the energy field is at the Technical University of Moldova, and if we end with about 100 new students per year, it's a great success. And very few of them decide to stay in Moldova when they have so many opportunities, and this field is so requested worldwide. So we have a lot of work to do. Always not enough hands and bright minds to do that work, but we very much hope that with continuous EU support and hopefully in the process of EU integration and with all the effort that the current government is doing, we will get to fulfilling or get better results in our energy trilemma.
Thank you very much, and I'm very glad to hear that the situation improved so much in Moldova, because I remember that when after in 2022, so when the war broke out, we immediately had a study on the state of art of the EUSDR countries, on how much they are impacted by the Russian gas dependency, and I still have the figure in my head that Moldova was the absolutely worst situation of all the EUSDR countries.
That's right.
On fossil fuels, so on gas dependency, impacting the power and the heating sector. So I'm very glad that you made that progress. So maybe the other two gentlemen, I don't know who first.
So I would maybe follow up. So in Czechia also we see this trend that the sudden rise of the prices of energy commodities actually started a lot of also positive processes. I spoke a lot about industry, but in our company we also see that many cities actually started to think about energy use way more strategically. And many years they didn't have to do anything because energy prices were low. To Czechia also a lot of energy flew or came from Russia and from like sources from countries we now are not anymore like taking energy from. And what is very nice to see is also how many cities in Czechia are actually transforming not only their mindset, but also are open now to invest into energy management on the city level, which in fact like economizes so much energy because as most of you know, Czechia is a huge museum. So we have a lot of buildings that are energy inefficient. And now finally, after 2022, we see that the demand for all these like technologies and all these improvements is very high, actually because of a crisis, which is positive. What we also see that cities actually now in Czechia also put more budget every year into investing into like energy infrastructure and everything, which I see as a positive development. And the challenge we face, it's also human resources. I think many Czech cities actually even have money, which is positive, but then they can't find an energy expert. We also have only few universities with this education. Young people do not want to study it because it's too hard. And then when they become energy experts, they have to do all these certifications that are also very hard. So it's true that even we, as a company that employ energy experts, we already, I think, know most of the profiles on the market. So
that's very interesting what you are saying, that the lack of human resources and experts is such a big issue. And I think this is one point where probably the Danube strategy could step in and initiate some cooperation, joint training, e-learning materials, whatever. So I think that's definitely an area where we could move further. So please think of that. Márton.
So going to Hungary, I would say that I'll bring up now two challenges, but the main challenges, as it was said previously, so it's based on facts. So in Hungary, we plan to have like 5 gigawatts of solar PV capacities by 2030. Now we are having around 8 in the country. So the renewable integration, also the system development on the TSO and the DSO level should be done. But that's, of course, let's say a CapEx heavy option. How we can translate it to a not that much investment cost heavy option. We can do the demand side response, flexibility markets, or we can create the aggregators on the energy communities. But now what Hungary has chosen is to finance and to fund energy storages. So now we are having a big boom for energy storages. The challenge is now how to handle the renewable integration. And now there is a, let's say, a hope for having energy storages that can have profit for many, many years on market-based matters with this funding. The question is that what that many of energy storages would cost the market. Because now what we can see, the energy storages can buy, for example, arbitrage electricity. So they buy when the prices are low and they sell when the prices are high. But the problem is that when we shift the grid injection of electricity with the storages to the times where the prices are low, then the prices would not be that much low at the end. So that would be the next challenge, how to handle this amount of energy storage. And the other one, I would say it's rather related to gas. It was not that much touched here, but it's rather a regulatory push or a regulatory compliance. As you know, there was the decarbonization pack or the gas decarbonization pack introduced last year in the EU. So in Hungary, we are trying to handle, and we are also having a funding scheme now for biogas facilities, also CapEx-based support. So the big question is also integration, but like integration into the distribution and gas networks, because like distribution network is just getting gas and let's say giving it to the consumers, but now what if the consumer is just injecting gas into the system, how they will handle it, how they can prepare it. So that's rather technical related thing. So the first one is much more about funding and how to develop the electricity system. The second one is how the daily operation and system operation could integrate the biogas facilities, which are not gas producers, which are not mining facilities, but they are animal breeding and agricultural facilities. So these will be the challenges in the upcoming years for Hungary, for sure.
Thank you. Well, several of you mentioned the importance of renewables in the energy transition in your countries, and also, and as I see let's say the commitment at political level is there in all countries. And the big question is the implementation. And some of you also mentioned, and we also see in the presentations, the role of the local communities, the local governments, the municipalities, whatever. So that would be my let's say, second question that to all of you, whoever wishes to answer, that how do you see that, which are the most important renewable sources, or probably not just renewables, but what alternatives are there in your countries to replace the fossil fuels, whether it's gas or coal, for example, in Bosnia and Herzegovina? And how do you see the actual implementation of this will, especially at local, governmental, municipal levels? I don't know. It's up to you which order.
Maybe we can use the same order. It will be, maybe the easiest. Actually, local level is the one, in our understanding, that will lead this process of energy transition. And the main goal is actually not just diversification, but also decentralization. So I think that in that aspect, local community should and play significant role. If we are speaking about renewables, small hydro, small wind, solar, PVs, prosumers, energy communities, but not just energy communities. We are also now in the process, and Bosnia and Herzegovina is pioneer in this, I must say. We are developing renewable energy communities that is great for citizens, to enable them to participate actually in the energy production. So I believe that this role of local level is really huge and should be additionally stressed. And this is part related to the renewable energy. If we are speaking about how local community can help us to reduce dependence on import or on fossil fuels for Bosnia and Herzegovina coal. Again, local level is the one who will implement energy efficiency measures. I think that they are the best energy is energy that we do not use. So there is a huge potential for energy efficiency measures. For example, in Bosnia and Herzegovina, households they are using the most energy if we are speaking about final energy consumption. So special attention should be put there to prepare special energy efficiency programs, to prepare building renovation strategy, where is possible and needed to develop incentives in this area. Also what is needed, so this is now not so connected to the local level, but it is connected to activities necessary to reduce dependence on import fuels, electrification of transport sector, electrification of heating. This is also something that was mentioned and discussing. It's really need to find right policies and measures in order to achieve that. And again, financial mechanism, because without access to funds, it will be hard, if not impossible, to implement all these technical measures.
Thank you. Somebody else? No?
So actually, if we go to the Czech case, so we already attained the maximum what we could buy biogas stations. Actually, we are now, so we have already too many of them across the country, and we don't have enough actually bio like waste to use, so it starts to be a little problem. Well, photovoltaic systems also became very popular for private use, and what we are now exploring in Czech Republic, it's actually agrovoltaic system, because like our agriculture still is quite huge. And actually there is new legislation allowing it, and Czechia actually used this opportunity to be among the first ones in the European Union to enable agrovoltaic actually power plants, where you combine like, I don't know, having some wine and plantation, and you can actually use these huge spaces for these photovoltaic panels that are upstairs. It's also very interesting because here we are touching a topic that is also linked to climate change, because agriculture, or in Czechia, we have this issue of less and less rainfall. Maybe not this year, it was some exception, but in the other years, yes, we have more sun, and actually we have to protect like our crops, and like many studies have shown that actually combining like or creating this agrovoltaics have like you can win in two fields, like protecting your plant vegetation and actually also getting energy. So I would say that this is a new topic in Czechia, where to maybe increase the sources. When we go to water, so this is not very popular in Czechia because we have a lot of nature protection organizations that are a little bit disabling, like some projects. I don't know, I will not give a stance whether it's positive or negative, but there were many projects in preparation, for example, to have a hydropower, like this small hydropower energy plants, and they were unsuccessful because they didn't get in fact a green light. When we go to like wind energy, this is another problem, because we have a lot of UNESCO cities and I don't know what, and it does not and when you put and people are really protesting, it is a little bit demonized in Czech Republic, like that they don't want to see a wind turbine like on their mountain or in their village. And so yes, so for us somehow photovoltaic became the most popular, and it's apparently the way.
Thank you. Irina, you have, as you mentioned, you have a lot of experience with local communities and energy communities. So how do you see how people, let's say, in the everyday life experience these challenges or energy transition issues, or anything, renewables or whatever you think is important?
Indeed, we see a lot of potential in energy communities, especially for residential sector, for multi-storage buildings, because without the concept of energy community, now in Moldova, installing PV system on a rooftop of a multi-leveled building is not very feasible, because mostly you would cover only spaces that are common, like elevators, common lighting, and so on. So energy community is opening the door for multi-level buildings. But beside that, so the organization I'm working at, called Green City Lab Moldova, is specifically focused on residential sector in energy communities. But beside that, we have some colleagues that are focusing on public buildings, on industrial companies, and so on. So most of those projects now are financed by Sweden and Norway, but there are also some initiatives from Germany, from Austria to finance energy communities, piloting of energy communities in Moldova. And of course, we are in the very same situation with PV panels. About 65% of the total energy production in Moldova from renewables is from PV panels. And actually, we are in the very same situation. We cannot increase our capacities from water sources because we do not have that many big rivers. And also with wind turbines, we're also in an almost difficult situation because again, our country is pretty small, our grid is pretty old. So when you combine those two, you get to the situation that most of the points where you can install high capacity renewable energy sources, and mostly that's the case for wind turbines, are already booked. And the installation process either started, either will start soon. So small scale PV system for us is the most tangible solution. And unfortunately, we do not have any movement in the hydrogen production in Moldova. Yes, maybe it will happen
maybe in the
soon.
future.
Yeah, we hope so. But yes, at this point, we have no movements in that direction beside mentioning in the strategies and so on. So yeah, that's the situation. And I mentioned previously that we got a huge increase in the installed capacity. I just have to be honest and mention that it's not only because of a lot of effort from the government, it's because of, firstly, huge price increasement for electricity. And because of this, for now, the payback period, for instance, in PV system for a house would be around 5 years, which is very accessible, and support schemes are very open, and you can find still a lot of grants and finding projects. So yes.
Márton?
Like few years back, like 10 years back, when we were talking about renewables in Hungary, we said that, it was a joke, of course, but like the wind is blowing more north of Hungary, the sun is shining more south of Hungary. We do not have high hills, so we don't have the strong rivers. We are a landlocked country. So based on this, I would say geothermal. But beside the joke, we can see that there is a huge boom in PVs. There is a potential and a strong potential for geothermal, and there might be a potential for wind, but some are currently not supported by regulation. The biggest issue for us, what I mentioned at the beginning, is not like, for example, how we can make enough amount of, for example, electricity in our country, because we have now, I would say, too much in certain times. The question is how we can handle it and how we can optimize it. So I would go back to solutions. It's not always about technologies, because we are building the CCGT power plants. The nuclear power plant has just stopped for some time right now, but how we can build up and make these markets mature. So the energy community, aggregators or communities, what we are having, we can introduce it, we can have regulatory measures for that, but then still they need some time, and it's counted in years until those initiatives would get matured and would be really efficiently operating in the energy market. So that's the next few years.
Thank you very much. We have just a few minutes left, and I was warned that we have to finish sharp on time. So I just would like to ask a final, and this is just 1-2 sentences from everybody, that if you would have a magic ball, then how would you see the energy system or the energy transition implemented in the Danube region or in your countries in, let's say, 10, 15, 20 years? Irina is young, so she can predict for 2050, but maybe by 2030, 2040. So what would be your vision for the future? Yeah, Irina.
Okay, so with that magic ball, I made my wish for everybody to understand how important energy efficiency is. Like, my dream is to not debate anymore with anybody that we should invest in renewables. We should put energy efficiency as the first priority, and we should not explain to anyone like why we should reduce our energy consumption in our houses, in our businesses, and so on. I wanted just to make a short reference. I had recently a 5 weeks fellowship experience in US, and coming from the background of Moldova, for me it felt so strange that in US such topics like sustainable development, energy efficiency are so far away in implementation in comparison to Republic of Moldova. And like, for me, it was so strange. And some topics now are even forbidden to be discussed, like sustainability development and climate change and so on, in the discussion with the federal government organization or Department of State and so on. So for me, it felt so strange. And I honestly hope that we as human beings at one point will get all of us to the understanding that it's our responsibility as a humankind to take care that all the goods that we have nowadays should after that pass to our future generation, and not burn everything and enjoy our life as many people still do till nowadays.
Thank you. Hopefully US will also learn that. Others, some vision, dream for the future?
I think I can totally agree that my dream would be that in 5-10 years it will not be a discourse anymore, like whether like energy efficiency is or isn't a topic. I even thought that we already closed this topic in Czechia, and it is opened again, like and some policies are going backwards, and we are redefining something that was already decided and proven to be efficient. So yeah, for me the dream is also like to agree already on these topics and have this common strategy and not changes, and to understand how important it is.
One is dream, and one is what we can really expect in this period, next 10 to 15 years. So what is maybe feasible to be developed these 10, 15 years, I think, is, put energy efficiency principle first, fully deploy and use a huge RES potential that we in Bosnia and Herzegovina have. And what is also important for us, clean air. Maybe we didn't mention that enough, but Sarajevo, especially during winter, can be one of the most polluted cities in the whole world. So I know that with implementation of energy efficiency measures, with electrification of heating system, with deployment of renewables, we can achieve a lot. And I hope we will do that.
Thank you. Márton?
I was an energy trader for almost 10 years, so I've learned that the bigger portfolio, the better optimization. So let's say my dream would be as a better connected region in any ways, because then you can optimize all the assets in a better way. And that can be said easily. The real dream would be if it could work without any obstacles, because that's the difficult one, how we can really operate it in a way that's mutually having a positive outcome for everyone included.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the panelists, for the interesting presentations and interventions. Thank you very much for the audience. And now it's time for coffee break. And I would like to ask somebody to take a photo of the panelists, so together we can stand up. And thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the event.